would be an input for them, I'm sure. Something that you would like to share with us today is actually we did in our studies, especially in Islamic economics. So data analytics is very important. Perhaps we all know about data. Sometimes we neglect the data and we don't have a good database. We don't have the good method to actually how to develop the data to become a measurable variables. Then it will be sound for our research. Then of course will be good for our findings. So again, Dr. Imran, would like to hear more from you, and I hope one day you would fly from Oxford. I know it would take 1 hour to reach Heathrow because that Oxford today, until today, does not have its own international terminal. But mashallah, because of Oxford has been well known as a center of education, one of the best educations. In fact, Oxford is the oldest English medium university in the world. Of course, as a Muslims, we have our legacy. We have our pride to have the first university, the oldest university, Arabic-speaking university, which is in Morocco. So this is actually something that we need to show to the world, because the university, I forgot the name, something like yeah, the university, we have not heard so much the research, current research released by the universities, but so many research papers released by Oxford. So we would like to be a university in Tazkia University College with valuable research findings, and for that we need more people like Dr. Imran to supervise us, to train us, and this is the time for the first introductions, and I'm sure Dr. Imran is willing to be with us in the days to come. Yeah, Dr. Imran, I know from Heathrow to Jakarta, it will take about 14 hours. But for the sake of our partnerships, I'm sure one day you would like to take this challenge, take the flight for 14 hours or so to Jakarta. So we are actually 2 hours away from Jakarta Airport to the campus. So inshallah, it will be beneficial for everyone. So enjoy the conference, enjoy the workshop, enjoy the talk show, and I'll be with you throughout the talk show, inshallah. Although I'm now just in Riau, is actually another province of Indonesia. We have just finished our meeting with the governor of Riau to discuss the Hafiz-Preneur program. I'm sure Dr. Imran knows about the program when you asked me for the first time. So the governor is interested to work together with us on how to provide educations for their people and on Hafiz-Preneur program. So they are Hafiz of Quran, they're Hafiz or Hafizah, but at the same time, they actually study about Islamic economics, finance, banking, accounting. So it's a bit 2 hours away from Bogor, from Miss Anita now. So I hope you will visit the beautiful Indonesia, inshallah, one day, Dr. Imran. So I think that's all from me. And again, thank you to organizers. Thank you to Miss Anita for organizing the program today. And we look forward to having more programs with Dr. Imran. That's all from me. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah wa alaikum Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Madam, for the very heartful welcome. The next agenda is session with Dr. Imran Alvi that will be chaired by our moderator, Ms. Anita Priantina. Ms. Anita, time is yours.
Thank you, Vera. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Once again, welcome, everyone, to today's international webinar. Before I invite Dr. Imran Alvi, I would like to introduce him a bit, even though he's already popular, actually. So our speaker for today, Dr. Imran Alvi, is the Chief Executive of Oxford Intellect, an Oxford-based institution focused on the transfer of knowledge from UK academics to universities globally. He is an experienced senior executive, having worked in the private, public, and charity sectors. Dr. Alvi is a trained economist with specialty in econometrics. He completed his master's and doctorate degree from Balliol College, University of Oxford. He acts as international editor to the Journal of Emerging Economies and Islamic Research, and he is also the honorary research fellow at the Markfield Institute of Higher Education and non-executive director at the educational startup DGVU Oxford. I think we have more than that. There are a lot that Dr. Imran Alvi will be sharing with us today. So I think without further ado, I will invite Dr. Alvi to deliver his presentation. You will have 20 to 30 minutes. Is that okay, Dr. Imran?
That should be fine, inshallah, Doctor, yes.
Okay.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Anita, for the warm welcome. Thank you to the Rector for such a nice and warm welcome to this event. Alhamdulillah, the first time I interacted with Institute Tazkia when I was speaking with the Rector, it was actually about the Hafidh-preneur program, which was really interesting to hear. This is the first in terms of my knowledge of universities where they're bringing both programs together, and very heartwarming and encouraging to hear how the Hifz was being combined with economics, etc. So let me introduce myself. To start with, I'm just going to share the screen and bring up the PowerPoint slides. Hopefully that's okay for everyone to see, nice and clear. I apologize, Dr. Anita, I haven't put the background up because it was flicking a lot, and I think it might disturb the viewers and give them a headache by the end of it. I'm not sure why that's happening on my side. I need to look at that. Okay, so today our topic is data analytics for Islamic economic studies. Before we jump into the subject area, just a brief introduction. As Dr. Anita mentioned, I'm Chief Executive of Oxford Intellect. We're a Oxford-based institution, and our aim is to transfer knowledge. We work with universities globally in over 7 countries now, and we have a network in the UK consisting of approximately 80 academics and professionals, each being a particular expert in their niche field. So that's everything from economics, finance, and business, but also we focus a lot on research methods. So it's very interesting to hear the Rector talk about the research that's happening at your institute at the moment. And what I would say, and hopefully we're going to talk about today, is how research methods and data analytics in particular can support that effort. As has already been mentioned, my background, I have a PhD and MPhil from the University of Oxford in economics, and also my undergrad was in econometrics and mathematical economics, which puts me in quite a good position in terms of talking about data analytics. Okay, so our purpose for today, just so we're clear, is not to try and cover everything that data analytics could cover, because that would take more than 30 minutes. We'd need probably the full year to cover a brief introduction to everything. The purpose for today really is to ask, can we support a degree, an Islamic economics degree? Can we support it by integrating data analytics or data science into that degree type? Would it strengthen the degree? Would it add value to the degree? And I've talked about Islamic economics here, particularly because my background is in economics, but the same question could be asked for accounting or certain other, or finance as well. And just to focus our minds, I'm putting this in question form. The key question is, if we were to introduce data science into a degree which has as its major Islamic economics, would value be added? If it does, then how would we incorporate that into the degree? And clearly, if it doesn't add any value, then we should not pursue that subject area. So I'd like you to keep that question in mind as we're moving through the slides. So to get everyone involved, so I'm not sure, mashallah, we have, from what I can see, 99 participants. So not everyone is going to be able to answer all of the questions and have them come up on the screen. But we'll just do it on a first come, first serve basis. I think it can take 40 responses at a time. So I'm going to pose 3 questions in front of you. So for those of you who are on their desktops or have access to the internet, if you move to this link here, I'm going to give you a few minutes to type it in while it's on the screen. Then we're going to have an interactive session where I'll be posing a few questions and you'll have the opportunity to reply, so we can see everyone's replies, inshallah, as they come in. So I'll give you a few minutes to find that web page. Maybe Dr. Anita, you can give me a nod once you're there, just so I know that it's all working from your side.
Yeah, I tried it before, and I have already posted the link on the chat room.
Okay, fine. So hopefully everyone is there. Now this is the bit we're going to test. Okay, so first question for you is, what is the purpose of a degree in Islamic economics? What's the purpose? If you were to put it into one sentence, we won't be able to take essay answers back. In one sentence, one word, how would you describe the purpose of a degree in Islamic economics? Why is it that those of you who are studying at the Institute, why is it that you're there? And for those who are teaching it, why is it that you've chosen to teach it? So we can see the answers coming in. Religious values, falah, recognition, based on Quran and Sunnah, Sharia compliance, based on Sharia values, commercial and social, the ethics, good one, I would agree with that, the ethics behind it, based on Islamic rule, how the participants involved in the related matter, again we have Sharia compliance, the maqasid, nashr, no riba, to create the suitable environment to do economic activities for Muslims. Remember that one, we're going to come back to that. Maqasid again, to have a basic understanding of Sharia and the maqasid. The ethical angle again, no riba, no maisir, no gharar, make better world for everyone. Okay, good. So social and commercial, economics of justice. So we've got lots of ideas coming in. We've got some overlap. I think we probably coming close to the 40 limit. Sharia compliance, more ethical. So we're seeing ethics come out again and again, and maqasid is also related to that ethical aspect, falah, and Sharia compliance. Okay, so lots of ideas coming out there, and what I'd say is the ones which come through again and again are around the ethics, around the Sharia compliance, and around the maqasid, and also this idea of helping Muslims, and this idea between not just a commercial aspect to economics, but also a idea around the social aspect, and we have well-being being added. Okay, so, and more well-being is coming in, so lots more coming in. Okay, so, and it's really encouraging actually to see. I was worried that when I posted this question, the only answer I would get would be Islamic economics being translated as Islamic finance, because obviously Islamic finance takes center stage in lots of areas. but it's good to see that people are thinking wider than just that. Okay, I'm going to pause there. I know we've still got a few more answers coming in, and go on to a next question for you. Okay, so people have already started answering that one already, which is absolutely fine. Next question for you is, how would you say Islamic economics is different to non-Islamic economics? How would you say Islamic economics is different to non-Islamic economics? So we've said so far, fair between parties, does not discriminate. Islamic economics is grounded in Quran and Hadith. Can we scroll down? This is the first time I've integrated it into a PowerPoint, so let's see how it comes through. Islamic is a win-win economy. Non-Islamic is a zero-sum game. Interesting. Okay, we're talking about zakat as a distributional instrument, altruism. Okay, so as more are coming in, one key point then that we can take away from the comments that have come in so far is that obviously Islamic economics is based on Quran and Sunnah, and that is, as when I speak to others, I talk about that as Muslims, that's our competitive advantage, that we have access to knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us and the Prophet ﷺ has given us, which is knowledge which often minds by themselves cannot reach. So we have that opportunity. And also what's coming out from a lot of the comments is there's a difference in objective, right? So there's a difference in terms of what we're trying to achieve through Islamic economics. And I want you to keep that in mind, because as we start talking about data science, it's going to be really important to understand where does that data fit in, right? Because if you try and make that data fit in the wrong place, then you'll move away from the essence of what we're studying, which is Islamic economics. So where is it that we're going to bring that data in to add value is a question I want you to keep in mind. Okay, so last question for you before we move on then. Applications. Where would you say are we still on the same question? So where would you say Islamic economics can be applied? What would you see as areas of application for Islamic economics? I'm not sure if the screen is showing. Okay, the poll is full, no longer accepting responses. Okay, now I think, have we come on to the next poll?
In mine, it doesn't show
It's not
a
showing.
new question. Yeah, it stopped until the difference between Islamic and non-Islamic economics.
Okay, let me just maybe pause, come out. Okay, let me do a new share. Okay, is that just one? Okay, let me do a new share, see if we can do it through the web page of it. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so what's the purpose of a degree in Islamic economics? Can you see that new share, Dr. Anita?
Let me check. I will try to refresh. Yes, the purpose, yes, we can see.
Okay. So let's have answers coming in on this question. Next question for you then is not the purpose. We've gone back to the purpose. Sorry, let me come out. Hope the technology is not going to fail me now. Just give me 1 second to bring it up.
After I submitted it, it's still on the purpose. The question doesn't change.
Okay, let me check now. Where can it? Islamic economics be applied? Okay, there we go. So we've got answers coming in now. So start from the family. So there's a family application. Okay, good. I would agree with that. If there were to be an Islamic state, it could be applied within the governing section, I suppose. Yeah. All the way from the individual to the state. So very comprehensive answer. Market, financial institutions, to ourselves. Again, starting from the family. Produce generations as a nation, which applies to the community about Sharia economy in our activities. Can anyone give specific examples of where they would like to see it applied? Community, Islamic economics in the world. So all economic activities, yeah. Rural areas, okay, so we're getting some specifics coming in now. The family, mosque, and community. Again, starting from the family. Okay, and then another comprehensive answer. So family all the way up to the bigger community, to society, digital devices, so some specific examples, small businesses, household firm, government, international trading. Okay, good. Government again. Start from yourself, your family, the business, everywhere and anywhere, medium and small enterprises. And then again, this a wide one, tourism, good. Environment, okay, mashallah. So it's good. It's heartwarming to see that we're not fixated again just on the finance side, but as we can see, there's lots of areas where Islamic economics can contribute. Okay, so hopefully we've got the market coming in. I'm going to pause there and go back to the slides. Okay, we have a few more. Okay, let's take a few more. Increased professionalism, innovation, research, marketplace. Okay, fine. Let me come back to my PowerPoint. And let's go to where we need to get to. Okay, so when we talked about the purpose of the degree in Islamic economics, we talked about trying to take the objectives of Sharia, the maqasid, to think about the ethics, to think about the Quran and Sunnah. And then we moved on to the question of, and all of those things, I would say, make Islamic economics different from the conventional economics. And when we moved on to applications, it was good to see that people were talking about, well, actually, you could apply this across the board, right? Starting from the very nuclear individual or family setting and moving all the way up to, one person said, the full world, right? You know, markets, government level, everything. So I wanted to just put in front of you then a few specific examples just to show how relevant Islamic economics can be, but then also to allow us to think about, well, where does the data bit fit in? So first example for you, under the general area of economics, health economics, we're in a situation of COVID at the moment, and obviously that's affecting different segments of the communities in different ways. So as a government, the government will then want to know and be advised on, well, how should we support different segments of the community? And as students and as researchers in Islamic economics, this is somewhere where we can most definitely contribute. But as the rector was saying at the initial stages of this meeting, was the research being produced is sometimes not so up to date as it could be and doesn't really hit those very pertinent questions that are facing the Muslim community and society at large when trying to incorporate Islamic economics and that Islamic view into it. And we're going to get back to why that might be soon. But there's one example, and you can see that to answer that question, data is going to be important. Another question, someone did mention trade policy. So if we want to answer the question, is protectionism justified in Indonesia? If you did a Google search for that, right, on Google Scholar, or you went to Scopus and you searched that question, you would be very hard pushed to find, I would guess, more than 10 papers or 20 papers, I'm talking about in the English language, I don't know about other languages, which are trying to tackle the question of protectionism, but from the viewpoint of Islamic. When you go into the Muslim world, like the Middle East and North Africa region, it jumps up to closer to 40%. If you go to countries like Brunei, it's about 30%. So that's roughly 1 in 3 people are unemployed. 1 in 3 young people are unemployed. In Indonesia, the World Bank estimates it to be 17%. That's roughly 1 in 5 young people unemployed. But if we were to ask, well, do we feel that as students of Islamic economics, and do we feel as researchers in the area, do we have the tools and the confidence to answer some of these questions from an Islamic economics viewpoint? I would say, and I definitely felt like this even when I was doing my DPhil at the University of Oxford, that actually if I was going to tackle this from an Islamic economics viewpoint, I don't feel too comfortable. I'm not sure I've got the resources available to tackle a question like that. That's what I would have argued when I was doing my PhD some 20 years ago. Now I feel a lot more comfortable because of certain learnings that I've gone through. But at that stage, I would say that the infrastructure that's there to support researchers in Islamic economics wasn't very mature. Okay, so, and one of the factors in that, again, going back to our topic for today, in my view, is this idea of data analytics. Are we able to use data in order to hit some of these questions? And I should keep an eye on time so I don't run over. It's 9:30. Okay, so, and again, I was really happy to hear the rector talk about this in the beginning of the introduction, that, you know, as a community of researchers and a community of students working in Islamic economics, our aim should be to understand and develop an understanding of the issues facing us, and then be able to respond to them in a meaningful manner. So where does data come into that? Okay, so in front of you now on the screen, I've got from a simple overview of what the data science journey looks like. And I should say at this stage that data science and data analytics, in my view, are used interchangeably in the literature, right? So when I say data science or data analytics, I'm talking about the same thing. Some people would argue data science is a bit wider, but for the purposes of this webinar, let's use them interchangeably. Okay, so 5 stages of this journey, right? I want you to concentrate at the moment on stage 1, objective definition, and stage 5, value generation. So I would argue both those 2 stages, this is where the learning you're getting on Islamic economics is so important. Because what differentiates Islamic economics in a major fashion from conventional economics is actually the objective behind what we're doing. Why is it that we're seeing a certain question as important? How do we, talking about value generation, how do we measure success? Is it just about profit? Is it just a financial valuation of whether we're successful or not? From an Islamic viewpoint, the answer is a big no to that question. You know, ethics are really important. On top of that, we have this long-term view of success. It's not just about success today, but also How do we measure success in the akhirah, in the hereafter? We want to take that into consideration as well. So stage 1 and stage 5 deeply rooted in Quran and Sunnah. They're the ones where you're being taught already on, the different aspects of maqasid, etc., that data can't really help you with. These are ethical questions. These are questions of belief and what you value or what somebody else values, right? So those two are as they are already, but that middle bit of the journey, stage 2, 3, and 4, data exploration, data preparation, and modeling, these are the bits where data really comes in. These are the bits where you can use data. Once you've established your objective, you can use data to help you reach a really good solution, right? So, and it's very important that we have that distinction in mind, because what we don't want to do is to start using data to develop ideas of what we value or what we don't value. Those things are ethical questions, and data can not guide you on them like the Quran and Sunnah can guide. But when it comes to understanding the context within which you're operating, then data is really important. Sorry, Dr. Anita, can I have a time check? How long do I have left?
We have 6 minutes left.
16?
6 minutes. Is that okay?
6. Okay, fine. Yeah, I might run over slightly, but I'll be there roughly. That's fine. Okay. Okay, so do we have precedence for this? Do we have precedence for the use of data when tackling these big questions on unemployment and different types of policy? And I would say yes, we definitely do. One example is on the screen in front of you from Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, and he was ruling in a time where the land that was governed by the Muslims was increasing at a rapid pace. And if you look at the sort of policy challenges he had then, they were very tough, very tough. But at the same time, he made some amazing innovations in terms of how to deal with those. And what I found really interesting was he would order a census of the Muslim territories, and in particular, new territories that they were moving into, in order to understand the context that he was having to govern. Yeah, he would gather that data and think how long ago that was in order to have a good understanding of the scenario that he was moving into. And for us as Muslims today, that's really important, because if we're going to contribute and we're going to produce those research papers and we're going to be able to advise governments on where they should be moving with youth unemployment or COVID, etc., we're going to have to make use of the resources that are in front of us to understand the context that we're in. And data is really important now, right? Data was important back then, 1300 years ago, it was important. But the reason it's so important now is because of the amount of data that's being generated, right? So the estimates are, I'm not even going to try and explain how much data 1 exabyte holds, but you can see there's lots of zeros after it. But a good idea is to understand that 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years alone, right? So the data we have now, 90% of that was created in the last 2 years. So you can see why data has suddenly become really important. And on top of that, they're expecting a 50 times growth from 2010 to 2020. And you get a sense of the opportunity here, because not that data never existed before, but now the amount of data and the granularization of that data, the exactness of it. We don't just measure what people have purchased. Just to give you one example, when people go on the web, we can measure how long they stayed on a certain page, whether they clicked on something or not, regardless of whether they bought it. So the amount of detailed data that we're starting to gather, same for location data as well, how people move, all these different contexts of which are generating data mean that they allow us to gain a really good insight into some of the key issues facing us today. So going back to that journey, what we're basically arguing is that if we want to generate value, if we want to answer these important questions from the Islamic economics viewpoint, then stage 2, 3, and 4, where we're trying to understand the scenario that we're in through data, is going to be really important if we want to get good solutions coming out at the end. Okay, so going now back to the idea of should we have data science in a degree? Okay, so I want to put a question to you that if someone turned up at your house and they had a toolbox of different tools and they were coming to say fix a leaking sink, and you see a workman come into your house with that toolbox that's on the screen, you would probably feel comfortable. You would say, okay, fine, I've got a leaking tap, he's got a fair set of tools, you know, let him go ahead and resolve the problem. But if this person was coming to you in order to build that house, and the only tools he had was a little toolkit in his hand, I guarantee you would feel very worried that how on earth is he going to try and build that huge house and he's only got those few tools, right? And I think that's the difference. You know, the rector was mentioning before how Oxford are producing lots and lots of research. It's not that they've got some inherent knowledge, in my view, which is different to what your researchers have. But what I would say is their toolbox that they bring in terms of research tools is much bigger than the toolbox that we have in terms of research. That they're bringing, you know, deep learning as a tool for forecasting, and we're still using regression. They're bringing advanced text-based analysis, and we're not yet analyzing text that's out there. You know, if you look at how many tweets are tweeted per day, it's in the millions. That's a lot of data there, a lot of useful data. What can it tell us as social researchers? How can we use that to answer some of the questions that we're trying to answer? So the tools are really important. And the question we have to ask is, do our students have the appropriate tools to be successful? Yes, we're giving them a good understanding of maqasid, we're giving them a good understanding of tarikh and how the earlier scholars approached tax, etc. But do they have the tools which have been developed more recently in order to apply that to the masses of data that are out there in order to have a chance to compete in terms of publications and policy advice with those who don't necessarily have Quran and Sunnah, but do have better tools? So data science, what is it? I mean, we don't have long, I can't give you a detailed explanation, but you know, in a nutshell, basically data science is all about how can we get insights from data? How can we have this massive amount of data out there and pull useful information from it? And to do that, you've basically got 3 areas of expertise. One is on the computer science side, one is maths and stats, and then the last one is the domain knowledge, in this case, Islamic economics, right? Or economics in general. So it's not that any of these areas are new in themselves. The term data science is new, and that's what often confuses people. But computer science has been there for a long, long time. Maths and statistics has been there for a very long time, right? And Islamic economics has been there for a long time. But what makes it different in terms of data science is that you're bringing different disciplines together. You're taking a certain amount from computer science, a certain amount from maths and science, maths and statistics, and then you're applying that to an area which traditionally would not have used those techniques. So those useful bits, when they're all brought together, that's what we're talking about in terms of data science or data analytics. The difficulty is, and I'm very conscious of time, that when you start moving towards this area, you're bombarded with so many different terms, right? So you have deep learning, you have optimization, you have neural networks, you have Gaussian estimation, you have random science. The names just go on and on and on, right? And for someone who's looking to incorporate data science into, say, an Islamic economics degree, the plethora of different names and technical terms is enough to put someone off. So how would we move forward if we want to develop this into an Islamic economics degree. You know, what should students think about? What should lecturers think about? What should the administration of the university think about? My advice would be that because data science is necessarily going to be a minor part of the degree, we're not suggesting that data science is taught as the major. Islamic economics is the major, but it's a minor. Therefore, the bits which are incorporated should be of a very practical, applied nature. Right? So what we're trying to do is to get students to be able to apply whatever knowledge they've learned. For example, rather than teaching them natural language processing as a topic, what I would suggest is you have a use case. You give them a project to do, which is very relevant for research, very relevant when they move out into the real world. For example, how would you analyze the response to economic policy using Twitter data? The Indonesian government, for example, announces a new policy. Almost guaranteed there'll be a discussion of that on Twitter. How can a student gather that data, analyze it, and draw insights from it in order to improve policy? Example one. Example two, inflation. How can we use real-time data from Google in order to forecast inflation? To do that, you're going to learn certain algorithms from computer science, machine learning algorithms. You may also use advanced time series regression. Again, that sounds like really technical stuff, but to give you an example, time series regression, which is a technical area, but if you want to teach someone the applied aspects of it, I would say you can teach someone who's got a basic understanding of regression how to apply time series regression in 2 weeks. Because what you're teaching is not the theoretical background to it, which is difficult. What you're teaching is how do you use the software, which does all the work for you. And the key bit is how do you analyze the results? What do those results that pop up on your screen actually mean, right? So that's the second. A third example, there's so much data on the web. How do you actually go about as a researcher gathering up all that data in a meaningful way, in an automated fashion, web scraping? Again, all of these are practical projects that we're, use cases that we're giving to the students. And the last one, did COVID policy, the different policies that have been implemented in Indonesia or wider, have they actually given the intended result? How would you measure that, right? So if you're an Islamic economist and you're working for the research team in a government, you would want to know how exactly do you evaluate policy. The most recent Nobel Prize for Economics was around randomized controlled trials and experimentation, Banerjee and other authors. How do you do that, right? How do you actually take students through the steps of that so they're comfortable when they move into their research project or they move into their work role to be able to evaluate different actions? Okay, and then we're almost at the end. In terms of integrating that into a degree, I would say 4 modules would be enough as a minimum to prepare students for the world of data science when they come out, right? I would emphasize that application is more important than theory because it's a minor part of the degree, not the major. And if I had to pick 4 topics, just to give you a flavor, this is more for the faculty members, the 4 topics that I would want to give students so that A, they have enough knowledge to then build on, but B, the knowledge is in demand in industry, government, and research. You know, these are the skills that are being used. I would say the first would be advanced regression, right? So, you know, we can talk about the different models later or maybe in the question and answer session. The second would be some element of machine learning, because machine learning is a very different approach to the econometrics approach of regression. The third would be data visualization, which is very important in terms of taking data and using it in a fashion across an organization or across a long research question to inform where you go, where your thinking is going. And the last one I would say would be training in one programming language like R or Python. They don't need to be experts, they just need to have the confidence such that they can use it as a springboard to go on and further their studies. And one statistical software, which I'm sure you're using already, because I know you're teaching regression there, something like SPSS or Starter. Okay, so in conclusion then, just to summarize, I know I'm run over time. The key points that I'd like you to take away is first, data analytics is going to give you an improved understanding of the context you're working in, right? If you want to understand what's happening with COVID-19, you're going to need to be able to analyze data. And that, if you can do that, then inshallah, we'll be able to provide solutions which are still based on our objectives of Islam, of Quran and Sunnah, but we've got a better understanding of context so we can provide better solutions. The second is the huge growth of data means that there's a huge potential. I mean, we can try and ignore it, but I can almost guarantee you, give it 10 years, it will be incorporated into Islamic economics and Islamic finance degrees. In the UK, we've had a massive explosion of degrees just focusing on data science because that's what's in demand in terms of employers. The third is make sure we equip our students with the right tools. We have to give them the tools that allow them to compete when they leave the university environment and they go into research or they go into government or they go into business. And to do this, in order to integrate it into the degree, we're trying to give them enough knowledge, enough confidence that they're happy to then go on and further their learning. And secondly, we're trying to give them that applied knowledge that is going to be demanded by employers, right? So it's a very tough environment at the moment for graduate employment. We want to give our students those skills that differentiate them when they go out there. How many students can go to an interview and say, yes, we understand Islamic economics, and also if you want a evidence-based evaluation of your next government policy, I'm happy to do that. I know exactly how to do it. And it might sound like that's a really big question, but again, in one module, I'm confident you can train students to have a good understanding of how to run a randomized controlled trial. Oxford Intellect have set up a similar thing in Brunei for the students there. So, you know, we've tried it, we've tested it, and that knowledge can be imparted in one module. Okay, so that's everything from me. Apologies for running over time. Is it questions next? I'm not sure. Back to Dr. Anita.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Imran. I'm sorry to limit your time because I want to allow more questions and discussions.
Sure.
Okay, so before I invite further question, I would like to read some of the questions on the chat room. We have first question from Bapak Samsul from Win Araniri from Aceh. So his question, how to develop an econometric analysis model under Islamic economic research framework, especially in theoretical corporate finance study? Do you want to answer one by one or?
Yeah, I can do one by one, might be easier for me. I think unless there's similar questions. So think about what an econometric model is, right? An econometric model is a model which basically says we're trying to explain one variable, and you're giving the example of corporate finance. So you can think what that variable is that you're trying to explain. For example, let's say investment into micro enterprise, right? And on the other side, you're going to have your explanatory variables. You know, typically that would be things like which sector are we in? I don't know which sector we're in, what sort of interest rate perhaps is prevailing at that time, etc. Whatever the researcher feels are important factors that explain the behavior of your variable, your dependent variable on this side, right? That's in a nutshell what an econometric model is. So all you need to do in order to implement Islamic economics into that model is you don't need to change the econometrics. The econometrics is just the tool, right? Again, it's very important to think of econometrics as a tool, not an ethical system. So how do you develop ethics into that tool? Well, you just choose the dependent variables which you think are important. So let's say we're trying to develop an econometric model of investment in micro enterprise. Now, if you look at the literature, which isn't from an Islamic background, they won't bring in charity or ethical reasons as a explanation for investment because they don't see it as relevant. But as a Muslim, and I would say this is actually true, especially when you look at micro enterprise, which are being developed by charities, lots of people invest in those micro enterprise because of sadaqah. It's ethical reasons. So if you can measure that, if you've got survey work that measures the reason behind investing, and one of the questions you're asking is, was it because of ethical reasons? Was it for sadaqah, or was it just for a return on investment? Then you'll have the data to be able to test that model. You don't, but what's key, what I'd like you all to take away is you don't need to change the econometric tool. You just need to change the variables that you're putting into the model. So hopefully that answers that question.
Next question from Bashir. He's one of our students, international class student. As someone who want to start a career in data science, what should I learn first, or what is the roadmap to become a data scientist? I heard about R and Python. What language do most researchers use for data science nowadays?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I'm assuming you want to go into research. I think that's the question you're asking. So obviously data science is massive. There's lots of areas you could specialize in. I would say the roadmap for moving forward is to take a problem, take a question that you're trying to answer, and then figure out which bits of data science do you need to answer that question. Because, you know, we've all been students before, right? And I'm just saying this honestly. Sometimes if you take a very academic approach to learning, you'll get bored and you won't complete the journey. Whereas if you've got a real question you're trying to resolve, for example, does COVID-19, is it more prevalent in certain areas in Indonesia than others? How would you answer that from a data science point of view? Straight away, you have to pick a language. I would recommend R as a starting place because it's very wide. You can use it for the stats bit. You can also use it for the machine learning bit. Python is good as well, but it's a bit more involved. I would start with R. And then you can slowly build in, okay, I want to map out, I want to visualize the data that I've got, right? How would you do that? So that's your first bit of learning. You're going to do that. And like that, you'll build a nice portfolio of examples of work that you've done, which will be your key to either start joining research projects or joining a company that needs those skill sets. But, you know, if you have specific ideas on what you want to research, etc., feel free to contact me through Dr. Anita afterwards. We can have a discussion if needed.
Okay, sure. Okay, next is from Alvi. He's our alumni. He's our first graduate for international class. What is your opinion about the adoption of instrument or tools of data analysis technology to Islamic banking and financial sector? Will it give the impact or disruptions to the human resource of banking and financial sector? If it does, will it be positive or negative?
So I have to say, I'm not an expert in Islamic finance. That's not my area. And I suppose I can say this because I've got the floor at the moment, but I would encourage you all to look at the wider aspects of Islamic economics. There's so many questions which are fertile ground that have not been addressed, whereas Islamic finance has a lot of, you know, like academic investment in it already. Not to say that's a bad thing, but it's a bit crowded as an area. So in terms of your question, will it disrupt Islamic banking? You know, for me, the question really is, it goes back to that question of objective. You know, when we talked about the data science journey and we started with a certain objective, and I feel it's very easy to slip into Islamic finance without asking, you know, what is your objective? You know, we're talking about disruption, but disruption to what purpose? What's the aim behind it? What are you trying to achieve? Once you've got that super clear, you can then answer the question of, would it disrupt? Would it make a difference? It is going to make a difference in the finance sector. We've seen that in the non-Islamic sector here in the UK, for example. There's so many alternatives to standard finance that are coming up, and they're all based on this idea of data science and using data to shift people along in a certain direction. You know, I can give you, you know, simple examples are like technology that allows you to pay in different currencies while achieving the best exchange rate. Is that a massive question for Muslims? Is it a good idea? Is it a good business opportunity? Maybe. Is it one of the big social questions for Muslims? I would say probably not. You know, it's not that major in terms of the other issues we've got going on in terms of what we would like to address. So again, not to say that you shouldn't go into Islamic finance or you shouldn't ask these questions, but I think you could invest your time and abilities in lots of other questions as well.
Yeah, I think maybe the question is also related to when we use more technology, there are more human resources are replaced. I think maybe what he was meant by the question.
Okay.
So next question from Nina, also our student. How do data science could be useful for Muslims entrepreneur? If we are entrepreneur.
If you're entrepreneur, yeah, good question. You know, again, lots of ways, right? So it's a hard question to answer in a sentence, but let me give you one example, right? So let's say that you have a very simple business like deliveries, right? You sell something and you deliver it to the customer, especially in COVID-19. How do you use the data that you're gathering on customers, right? Because generally, if you're selling and you're delivering, you're going to get information on location of where your customers are. How can you use that data to improve your business? There's lots of ways. You know, one way is how can you optimize delivery times? How do you use that data to think about how deliveries are made, so you don't have to keep going to the same area multiple times, but you can gather orders and get there in one go. You can also start to do things like imposing location of your customers, and on top of that, you can put data in terms of average incomes for different areas to start to build up a detailed picture of what your customer base looks like. You can also ask questions around repeat customers. Can you identify through the data who your top 10% of repeat customers are? Would you want to implement a different pricing strategy to them compared to buyers that come one-off? There's a whole list of questions, and it gets quite technical. So now, if you look at the bigger retailers, we were working with a company in Turkey, and they do price differentiation, which the economic students I'm sure have heard of, but they're doing price differentiation in real time. So they're looking at customers on their website, and depending on the behavior of customers, they then change the price. So there's ethical questions around that as well, whether that's fair or not. But that's one of the ways that data science is being used to help entrepreneurs offer a more personalized product and pricing to the customer.
So it's still beneficial, especially if we want to get bigger, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next question from Bapak Nugroho Agung. I'm not sure whether he's a lecturer or a student, so let's call him Bapak. Dear Mr. Imran Alvi, how do we harmonize tax policy into Islamic economics according to Sharia perspective? Maybe because you mentioned tax policy on one of the fields.
So I have to say again, I'm not an expert in tax policy from Islamic economics point of view, but from where I'm coming from in terms of data science, what I would say is there is a lot of data already on the population of Indonesia, right? How do you use that data to start to model what a tax change would look like for different segments of the community? Right, so one technique, this is a more advanced technique, I wouldn't suggest this is used in an undergraduate degree, but agent-based modeling. Agent-based modeling allows you to develop a model of the economy where we're not assuming all consumers or families are of the same type, which was what was previously done. It's very intensive in terms of computational power that you need to do it, but you can start to model different scenarios that will emerge if you were to, for example, change the income tax rate by 5%, 10%. Who would it affect more? Who would it affect less? right? And what I'm trying to suggest is that knowledge, my background is in modeling, I can talk about that, but you need to combine that skill set with a deep understanding of the Sharia in terms of tax rules. And you need to bring both together, because from my reading and understanding of Islamic economics, not every scenario is defined. We have some things which are very clear. Interest is haram, certain products are haram, gambling is haram. But then when you come on to other topics, for example, when Umar radiallahu anh, he introduced a benefit, a child benefit, very early on, where children who were of weaning had stopped being fed by their mothers, they had been weaned, they were entitled to a certain amount of money from Baytul Mal. Okay, so this is a policy which is based on ijtihad. It's not based on a very clear, this is the rule. And once he was traveling, I'm just giving you an example of how the scenario makes a difference, and you need that data to figure out how things work. Once he was traveling and he saw that a child was crying, and he went and asked the mother, why is your child crying? And the mother, not realizing that this was Umar radiallahu anh, said that we have a rule where once a child is weaned, they're entitled to a certain amount of money from Baytul Mal. So I'm trying to wean my child early so that I can take that benefit. And when Umar radiallahu anh heard this, he started to weep, and he changed the rules so that all children would get that benefit. Okay, so you can see how that new data that reached Umar radiallahu anh changed his view of the policy. What we need to do is to bring these two skills together, the data science aspects. You can model and see how a certain tax change is going to affect different segments of the community, and combine that with those, and I'm not one of them, who have a detailed knowledge of tax within Islam, our scholars, etc., so that you can bring both bits of knowledge together and have a really comprehensive answer to your question, which is, how do you harmonize tax policy with the situation in a particular country?
Okay, now we have quite a long question here from Lotfi. I'm not sure whether it's Ibu or Bapak Lotfi. He or she is saying that it's getting a bit confused. You are referring to an Islamic economic paradigm, which is a comprehensive system that consists of macro and microeconomic aspects. The thing is that we are not having a pure Islamic economic example that is currently implemented due to the absence of an Islamic state. Therefore, we are collecting data that is not representing an Islamic economy, and instead we are collecting a mixture of data, which eventually won't provide the researchers with clear visibility on the Islamic economics. With that, I think we put more emphasis on the creations of an Islamic state or Khilafah, which will be able to implement Islamic Sharia. What do you think on the Khilafah? So we can really have a real data on Islamic economics.
Yeah, I think the question of data is really important. The question of what data we have as researchers to use is really important, because when you start to measure something, you're basically saying that bit's important, and that's why we're measuring it. And I would say that we can improve the data that we're recording, and we shouldn't feel as researchers that it's an impossible task, especially with the rise of different data sources, right? So when I was talking before about web scraping, how can you go to the web and start to gather data which is important? How can you use new techniques like online surveys to understand and gain that data that you need? How can you use experimental workshops? Amazon has a certain element to it where you can put a new product on Amazon and get customer feedback on that product. And there's a whole bit of economics, which I'm sure a lot of you listening are aware of, experimental economics, where a similar scenario is created. You put scenarios in front of people to gather their response in terms of data. That's quite easy to do now, given the technology that we have, and is relatively low cost. It's not like doing a manual survey of the full country anymore. Once you've combined that with a good understanding of statistics, so you know how big your sample needs to be in order to be representative, the costs are not, for an individual, fine, it's a cost which perhaps they can't bear, but for an institution, a university, these are things that can be developed, so you can do interesting research in that line. And I would say, data-wise, we have a long way to go in terms of what data is being collected, but I would encourage you not to feel like it's an impossible task. It can be done, especially if you get on top of the latest tools of technology to do so.
Okay, next questions from our student. He's asking about the mixed method, qualitative and quantitative. Now I think this method is gaining more popularity. And sometimes when we are talking about data science, it's more to quantitative. Dr. Imran?
Yeah, really good question. Definitely, mixed methods are good. Why are they good? Because you're allowing a bigger data set to influence your results. You're not limiting yourself just to qualitative or just to quantitative. So where you can, it's good. Data science doesn't limit itself just to the quantitative side. I'll give you an example. Twitter data, right? How do you analyze Twitter data? Twitter data is definitely on the qualitative side. It's text-based. So there's techniques being developed for that. Sentiment analysis is now quite established and used, and there's other techniques you can use as well. Myself and a colleague, we're doing some research on papers being produced in Islamic economics, finance, and business, and for that we're looking at text. We're not looking at numbers, and we're using algorithms from machine learning to start to group the data and understand trends in the data. So again, it's not number-based, but it definitely is on the data science side. So, I would encourage you to use mixed methods where appropriate. But there's lots of ways that data science can help in that. Even if you've done something like a focus group, if you've done lots of focus groups and you have a big chunk of data which isn't possible to go through by hand, then again, you've got natural language processing as a technique to start to understand that.
Okay, next question from Pak Topo. He's asking on, maybe you've come across the differences between the performance of Islamic finance and conventional finance. He asks, why is it still difficult to compete between Islamic finance, of course, to the counterpart?
Again, I'm not an expert in Islamic finance, but what I would say is important to reflect on is the objective. Again, we should be really clear. I remember listening to a lecture on economics by a famous economist from the States, and his name's gone completely out of my mind now. And he was saying that, as economists, we teach students and we study how to grow GDP, how to grow the economy. And that's like one of our biggest aims, grow, grow, grow. But we never ask, why are we growing the economy? What's the objective behind it? What's the purpose? Is it to help the poor, or is it to make the rich even more richer? That question isn't asked. And in a time of, where we are in terms of the recession and COVID and inequality, non-Muslims are asking the question of why, what's the objective behind this policy, more and more. So as Muslims, who are very concerned with the question of why is it that we're doing something, we should ask in Islamic finance, what's the objective behind it? Is it to facilitate trade? Is that what we're trying to achieve? If that is what we're trying to achieve, have we taken the right approach to do it? Is it to help the poor? Is it to allow people to transfer money to family members? Sometimes I feel like the objective is not kind of focused on enough in order to get a good result in terms of what we talked about in terms of generating value at the end. But the wider question of why Islamic financial can't compete or isn't competing, if that's the question with conventional, I think you'd have to ask someone who's more proficient in Islamic finance.
Is it because they have better and advanced data science applications?
maybe that's one of the factors. Yeah.
Okay, next question is from Hilmi Aulia. Is there any other data source other than internet and manual collecting?
Is there any other data source but for internet and manual collecting? There's starting to be lots. So manual collecting is a catch-all, right? You can manually collect anything. But in terms of automated collection, so you've said the internet. Another growing area is the Internet of Things. Internet of Things. That's sensors being placed in different positions in terms of manufacturing, etc., to gather data. That's going to be a very interesting area. And another one I would encourage you to look at is location-based data. That there's lots of data being collected on where people or things are, right? And that can be very interesting for research as well. So a couple of more examples, but obviously the internet is very wide as a data source, and manual collection is also very wide.
Okay, next questions is on data science and digital marketing. Is it related to each other? It's from Sister Filza.
Yeah, I would say that they're related to each other. Digital marketing is kind of, for me anyway, I would see it as a subset of data science, or an application of data science. So this is a good example when someone was saying they're starting out on the journey around data science. Is you could take a topic like digital marketing. How would you help a firm market digitally? And again, when you start to look at digital marketing, as the name suggests, a lot of it is about data. How do you use the data that's there on digital platforms to improve your marketing effort, improve the return on investment you're getting from your marketing? And because it's done in a digital format, there's so much data which is automatically collected. And that's really important in terms of using the data science.
Okay, next question is from Brother Fahmi. It's about web scraping that you mentioned just now. Is web scraping another term to take documents manually from a website, for example, a government's website, or should you do something using computer automations? So how this web scraping is actually being implemented?
Yeah, web scraping is automated. That's the advantage of it, right? So, you can go to different websites, and if you're just looking at, say, 2 websites, copy and paste, get the data into Excel and then clean it up. But when you're trying to look across multiple different websites, or you're on a website which has very different pages, then you want to automate that process. And that's what web scraping does.
Okay, I think like in our university in Tazkia, all students under the Faculty of Islamic Business and Economics, they will get introduction to statistics, and they will get basic econometrics. So at least they will learn up until regressions, up until, if I'm not mistaken, factor auto regressions and sorry, factor error fraction model. But I think maybe we need to add more on the internet related data science, or data management, or data analytics. So I think when you mentioned that we need to learn on advanced regressions, machine learning, data visualizations, programming language, and statistical software, I think internet-based data analytics is the field that is really needed. And I think maybe classically universities will teach on econometrics, especially for economic students, but maybe mostly on the methods that we have been doing. But I think to analyze internet-based data is quite new. We need to develop more on that. I think there's more questions from Brother Fahmi. Is it proper to use this term? For instance, we manual scrap the information from the website. Is it the normal?
Yeah, I mean, you can manually scrape data from the website, which basically means you're going from site to site. And like I said, if it's a small amount of data, not so many websites, you can do that. Where it comes in more useful if you've got a large number of websites that you need to go to is when you can automate it. You just need to be careful. Some websites do not allow that legally to automate web scraping. It's not allowed according to their rules, so you have to check their rules first. Obviously, it depends on the data that you're trying to gather.
Okay, now I think I would like to invite Pak Bayu. Pak Bayu, he would like to ask you directly. Pak Bayu, you may unmute.
Miss Anita,
Yes,
hello.
please.
Hello.
Yes, please, Pak Bayu.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Anita, and thank you, Mr. Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Imran.
Refer to your data science journey in your presentation just a moment. If we talk about Islamic economy, we would not just talk about data from our phenomena, but the most important thing is how to insert the Islamic economic concept, values, or something like that into our analysis of the phenomena. Then if we take a look again to your data science journey in your presentation, basically I didn't find it different with data science type in mainstream economic. So the problem is how to combine between phenomena analysis and Islamic values. So to make different with Islamic approach, what do you think? Where is exactly you can insert the Islamic economic value in data science step to provide better solution to humankind in Islamic perspective? Since solution when economic also can provide better solution, not just Islamic. So the problem is how to combine Islamic values into the data. What do you think, sir? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So interesting question. And I think that's the question which throws lots of people, right? That how do you combine the two? You know, how do we take Islamic economics and put it into a regression or put it into machine learning? And what I would say is, you know, when you think about, if we take the Islam bit out and you just look at some economic research, right? Let's say somebody is trying to figure out whether there's a pay differential between men and women in the banking industry, right? Let's say that's the research question. Then as soon as they get into the tools now are just helping them answer that question. They don't need to change the tools in any particular way in order to answer that question around, is there a pay differential or not? You just pick the right tool, put in the data which is relevant for the question that you've identified, and then the tool will do the work for you, right? And that's how, you know, when I was talking about regression before, how it works as well. I think as researchers, what we need to do is we need to start to develop models which reflect our thinking as Islamic economists. So I'll give you one example. And I'm sorry to just keep using research that I'm working on, but it's fresh in my mind, which is why I'm mentioning it. We're trying to analyze graduate unemployment, right? Now, when you look at graduate unemployment as an economist, lots of the reasons that are provided for unemployment is, in the UK in particular, is oversupply of graduates. Second reason, there's a mismatch between the skills being taught and the skills being demanded by employers. Third reason, maybe we're just in a general economic downturn. So they have these different theories, right, which they develop and then they test using the tools. They don't change the tools, but it's the theory itself which is, you know, which makes it different. So what we're trying to do is say, well, how would you tackle that from an Islamic point of view? You know, where can Islamic economics help in understanding graduate unemployment? So when we look back at our resource knowledge, the Quran and Sunnah, and what the scholars have written, then you see that in Islam, one aspect which hasn't been studied or hasn't been put forward as a reason for graduate unemployment is the concept of himma, of ulul himma, high aiming aspirations. You know, if you go and you search it, even in the standard economic literature, you'll only find a few papers on it. So how do we incorporate that as a model? Well, the way you incorporate it is first you develop the model. You say, we believe from Islamic economics point of view that himma is a important factor in explaining the variable graduate unemployment. And once you've got that, now I can use regression. If I wanted to use regression, I just need to collect the data. I don't need to change the tool itself. I just need to develop my model. And I think that's the bit where we need to do the work. You won't need to change the model. You won't need to change machine learning algorithms to forecast whatever you want to forecast. You just need to make sure you've identified the right theoretical model which explains it. Does that answer your question, Dr. Bahyu?
Enough, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bayu. I think we have further questions from Brother Fahmi. Can I ask more about fundamentals of web scrolling? For example, if we collect data from Twitter using machine learning, for instance, orange data mining, when the computer via the machine learning collects the data, is that what it's called web scrolling? Is it scrolling or scrapping?
For Twitter itself, I'm not sure if the term is used or not. You'd have to Google it. So generally, the papers that have used Twitter, they're setting up like a loop algorithm that allows them to download that data every 15 minutes or so, and you're building up your data set. So I'm not sure I would call that web scraping, but you can double check the way it's used in the literature. But just to make the concept clear, web scraping is basically, to put it simply, where you're going to a website and you're scraping off the data. You're taking the data from that website. That's all it is. It doesn't get more complicated than that in terms of concept. What's more complicated is how do you achieve that? How do you set up an automated program that can go and do that for you? I hope that answers the question, Fahmi, but happy to discuss it more offline if you would like to.
Yeah, I think I have read all of the questions on the chat room. I would like to invite one more questions if there's any. If there is someone who would like to give question or comment, Madam, do you want to give comment or question? We have. Brother Fahmi is still curious about the fundamentals of text mining. I think maybe we can have another sessions with Dr. Imran, but I think it's okay if you would like to type your one last question on the chat room, or do you want to ask directly to Dr. Imran?
On the fundamentals of text mining?
Yeah.
That's a long question. I wouldn't be able to finish that.
Okay. Okay. So inshallah, next session. Yeah, inshallah. So alhamdulillah, we have quite fruitful discussions. Thank you everyone for joining us in this international webinar and in this discussions as well. There are a lot of questions, and I think I hope that everyone is gaining benefit from this event, from this international webinar. Thank you once again, Dr. Imran Alvi, for sharing us on data science and how it is used for the Islamic economic studies. And inshallah, this is not our first and last sessions with Dr. Imran and discussing on data science. Inshallah, we'll have more sessions with him discussing more advanced topics on data science related to how we will implement it in our fields, especially in Islamic economics and Islamic finance. I've seen that we have a lot of participants, not only from Indonesia. I've seen some of my friends from Malaysia, and I've also seen one from Sri Lanka, if I'm not mistaken, and some other partners, some other friends, some other universities in Indonesia, not only from Tazkia Islamic University College. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Please fill in the form.
I have just 1 minute.
Oh, yes, please, Madam Ani.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I see the interest from Brother Fahmi Ahli Hudaifi. He's a very good researcher, mashallah. And also Dr. Bayu and Dr. Ascharya here as well. They have been very motivated and have been guiding our students for research activities. And perhaps we can have a kind of projects to do. What I mean is not just about discussions, but we go through a particular research project, how we can actually go about together on data analytic and data mining or data trends, etc. Just like when I saw worldometers, when we see the number of COVID, number of baby born, number of people who die every day, I'm interested to find out, Dr. Imran, all this data has been generated in a such way, and I would like to see a number of deaths before the pandemic, a number of deaths during the pandemic, and number of deaths after the pandemic, and how we can actually have the structural break to see and whether all the countries have the same pattern. So whenever I see the worldometers, I always like to see this data. So it runs every second. Even some of the data are very rich, but unfortunately it's not belong to we in Islamic economics and finance. You understand, Dr. Imran? So we are still very poor in terms of database. And in fact, when my students ask about data on the Islamic banking and finance, the whole world, we can't find it. We have to handpick the data from each Islamic bank. So again, we have this, what I mean, our partnership with Oxford Intellect should have a kind of a fruitful project where, not only to do the analytic, but also how we actually can have a permanent database to be useful for the development of Islamic economics and finance. So that is actually my thought, but of course, 1 hour isn't enough. And we have to go and visit you at Oxford Intellect, or as I suggested earlier, you have to come and visit Bogor to spend 15 hours in the flight, and we will pick you up at the airport, inshallah. So I'm sure there will be another chit chat between just Anita and Dr. Imran, and also Dr. Bayu. I already pursued him actually to be the team on how to see we go about it, and I can see the rising numbers from the participants from time to time just now, to show that the interest on how we go about to have different approaches, different models on Islamic economic and finance. Although from classical point of view, positivist approach like this has been criticized because it says that it is natural free, it is actually value free concept, etc., and is detached from the Islamic values. We have to prove it. And how we actually, Auguste Comte talks about positivism is different on what positivism approached by or employed by the Muslim researchers. So the discussion is going on, Dr. Imran. This paradigm, the research paradigm, this research approach have been actually highlighted in our curriculum and our discussions, research discussions in the campus. So I hope that one day we will have more thoughts on this one, and we will bring with you researchers from our side, or perhaps Brother Fahmi Ali Hudaifi would like to also sit together with us again. And of course, we are welcoming everyone. We hope for 1,000 researchers, for instance, because this is not something that I can see that many people are lacking of this kind of skill, and we would like to have more. And we have to acquire, and we have to be in the front line when we talk about the Islamic economics and finance and the data. Thank you, Dr. Imran. I'll see you again, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So before I close this session, I would like to invite Dr. Imran for giving the closing statement.
Closing statement, just to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Rector, for your warm welcome and hosting me today. Thank you, Dr. Anita, for organizing everything and working with me to get. Has been beneficial, and like I said, especially for the faculty members at the Institute. If there are further questions or discussions you would like to have, feel free to get in contact through Dr. Anita. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Imran. Thank you, everyone. If you still want to contact Dr. Imran or to have more discussions with him, you can contact him through me, inshallah. Just fill in the informations on the form, which is already written on
Dr.
the
Imran, for your information, those attend today's program come from different universities in Indonesia, Malaysia, and I think other country as well. So they are all leaders in Islamic economics and finance researchers, and also some of them actually play important role in industries.
Thank you, Rector. I hope it's been of benefit to everyone who's attended.
Okay, thank you very much once again, Dr. Imran. So I would like to close this session by reciting Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, and I will return the sessions back to our MC. Fira.
Yes, Miss. Thank you, Miss Anita. Now let's get into the next agenda, which is photo session. Please, to all participants, to turn on your camera. We're going to take some pictures. Okay.
Okay, please turn on your camera, everyone. Make sure you are in the picture.
Yes. Okay, start from screen 1. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The next, mashallah, we get like more than 100 participants today. To the next screen, the second screen. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Do we have any the third screen, Miss?
Yes, just take picture of everyone.
Okay.
We have 5 screens here.
5 screen. Okay, maybe now is the third screen. 1, 2, 3. Move to the fourth screen. 1, 2, 3. And last, the fifth screen. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, do we got all the picture, Miss?
Yeah, I think so, inshallah.
Okay, Alhamdulillah, we're already in the last session. Thank you to the speaker. Thank you for all participants. I hope that we all gain more insight, especially in data analytics subjects. I'm Novira Aprilia, sincerely apologize if there are any mistake that is not supposed to. Let's close today's webinar by reciting Alhamdulillah and doa kafaratul majlis. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Akhirul kalam. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Imran Alvi. Thank you, Tazkia.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you very much, everyone, and the organizers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Hanan Hussein.
Yeah.
From Sri Lanka, right?
Yes, of course.
How do you get the information about this webinar?
So I participated winter course of this IPB.
Oh,
Then Asif Maulana shared the link and the information. So I registered soon after that.
Alhamdulillah.
Very informative session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you on next webinar, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Bhavina, are you here?
Yes.
Bhavina, could you please create a break Zoom?
Breakout Zoom.
Yeah, breakout Zoom for me, Madam Ani, and Dr. Imran.
Oh, okay.
Okay, everyone. Thank you very much.
Also, Dr. Bayu.
Also, Dr. Bayu. Is he still here, Dr. Bayu?
Please, thank you so much.
Thank you, Fira. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next webinar, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Don't forget to fill in the
Assalamualaikum.
form, yeah? The registration
Miss.
form.
Bayu, the Dr. Bayu, there is no here.
I think he has left. It's okay. Maybe only me, Dr. Murniati, and Dr. Imran. Bhavina, are you still here?
Still, ini create the room.
Oh, okay. Are we ending soon? Sampai jam berapa waktunya?
6:30.
Oh, 6:30, okay. Or maybe just create the new one, Bhavina. Bhavina, hello.
Miss Anita, there is another discussion.
Yeah, actually, Madam Ani invites you to have a discussion with Dr. Imran.
Oh,
This week. Bhavina.
just leave and then we join again. You give us click link.
Okay, we will create the new link then. Okay, so I think everyone could leave this room. We will use the new link. Assalamualaikum.